Afternoon, everybody. I wanted to share with you today some results from a recent survey of school principals, a nationally representative sample of school principals, asking them about last school year. So it's quite recent. And as part of that, we asked them some questions about which attendance improvement strategies they're using and how effective do they think they are. And I want to share some interesting findings from that with you that really make the argument for a comprehensive approach. So we asked our principals, elementary, middle, and high school principals, to tell us if they're. We put forth sort of 8 evidence-based strategies that we know have been advocated for by many groups and many schools are using, and we asked them to tell us if they found them. If they were using them. 2, were they not effective, somewhat effective, effective, or very effective? And you can see the strategies there. I won't read them all, but you'll notice these are some of the core strategies that evidence-based strategies that I know many schools and districts are using or trying to use, and that we and others like Attendance Works and other groups have advocated schools to use. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And so what did we find? Well, interestingly enough, for each of those strategies, roughly equal numbers. Sometimes it was a little more on the yeah, it's a little effective or a little more on the yes, it's quite effective side. But in general, for each of those strategies, we had some principals saying it was either not effective or just somewhat effective, and then we had an equal or greater number, and occasionally lesser numbers saying, oh no, that was an effective or very effective strategy for us. So that tells us right away, right, that there's no one size fits all. As we often say, it really depends upon knowing what your challenge is. And then, effectiveness is really both alignment. Is this a strategy that even addresses the reasons our kids aren't coming? And also implementation. Are we able to actually implement it as needed to have its effect? So when principals say it's not effective or somewhat effective, it could be a misalignment. It doesn't really address what their challenges are, or it could be that it doesn't work in their case, or it could be that there was problems or challenges to implement it. The 2 strategies that had the highest percent of principals saying like this is effective or very effective, really related to this idea of connectedness we've talked about, both improving student-teacher and student-to-student relationships. Interestingly, the 3 strategies that the greatest number of principals said we're not even doing this strategy, which could be because they don't believe they need it or they don't believe it would work in their school, or it could be just because they have not been able to do it or have other priorities. But the largest one was this idea of surveys or interviews to understand why students are not attending. I think that's a thing we should consider, and I think even some of our discussions today, ways that site coordinators and other folks or wraparound supports can help schools do this is we really know that you have to know your challenge, and the fact that not quite half of the schools are saying we're not actually asking our kids or our parents why our kids are not attending could be a reason for some of that misalignment. The other 2 are much smaller percents, increasing extracurriculars or having attendance teams. That still says the majority of principals, large majority of principals are trying those strategies. All right. Next slide. So what did we find when we looked at what combinations led to maybe the best outcomes? Well, what we found was that principals reported multiple effective strategies, right? We don't have just one effective thing we think is effective. We have multiples. That the more they had multiples, the more likely they were to report having large attendance gains. So about a little more than a quarter of principals said of those strategies you've shown me, we're only finding one or none of them to be effective, right? And of those, 60% only had no or some attendance improvement. Now, another 40% still had good improvement, either, with only one of those being effective, or it could be they're using other strategies not on that list that were effective, right? When that was in about, you said, about a quarter of principals were there. The middle point, the median and the mean was 4 strategies. About schools were, half or above, half or below 4. When principals said we're using 4 of the strategies we're using, we're finding to be effective. Then only a quarter of those principals were reporting no or some attendance improvement, and three-fourths were reporting we had good improvement, or actually we got back to our pre-pandemic levels. So there we can really see the difference between 1 and 4 is quite large. And then, even this is a case of more effective strategies is better. When we get up to 6 or more, and again, that's about 30% of principals, we find, less than 20% are saying we're not seeing improvement, and 8 out of 10 are saying we're seeing good improvement. So I think that is, makes sense, but it's good to see it, that it really is. It's not just about one effective strategy. It's about finding a couple or 4 or more effective strategies seems to be the sweet spot to see the more substantial attendance gains. And it was just good to see that the principals themselves are finding that when they have more effective strategies, they're seeing better results, which is important because it shows you that schools have the power to change these dynamics, right? It's not so overwhelming or so driven by factors beyond their control that their actions are not having an effect. This shows, in fact, their actions can have quite a strong effect. And the last thing I wanted to share, and really to set up our panel today, is we also asked them, and this was asked in our RAND survey, but also in a federal survey, what are the reasons you think your kids are not coming to school? And after being sick or not feeling well, the highest percentage was mental health challenges, which half the principals said that was a challenge, and then transportation, 40%, unstable housing about the same, and taking care of siblings. So again, I think that's just interesting because those are things that often, as we're going to hear in a minute, that like wraparound supports or site coordinators or community school models or communities in schools as partners help address. But I think the other thing to keep in mind, and one of the things we're trying to work with folks this year, is that absolutely that's a very important role for those strategies of those folks. So we can see there's a lot, principals believe there's a lot of kids missing school for sort of those out of school reasons or mental health challenges. But also keep in mind that they were saying our most effective strategy is improving student to student and student to teacher relationships. And that may be an area also where external partners can help and bring additional people power to build those relationships. Because again, it's sometimes hard for school staff alone to be able to make all those connections. And then also think about that thing of 40% of schools not really asking their kids or their parents why they're not coming. Perhaps again, that is another role where partners, wraparound support, site coordinators could also be of use. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen and our panelists to show how this is really happening on the ground. And again, how schools can come together and work collectively and make a difference.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your insights. And a little bit later, we'll share, actually, there's the full report, if it isn't already in the chat, and an op-ed that Dr. Balfanz created at the 74 that explains a little bit more about our RAND survey findings, and even a webinar tomorrow if some of you are interested in joining. I believe it's tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? We have the registration link for you too, and we'll put that in a little bit later. So always appreciate your insights and your time in joining us today. And I think that you're right, it tees up our time with our panelists today quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and move us there. Today, we're really looking at leveraging community school models to address chronic absenteeism and the role that partnership can play in that as well. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to bring to all of you some of our colleagues from Hempstead Public Schools, as well as their partners at Hofstra University, to talk more about the work that they're leading, but also to be really sort of activating for you opportunities that extend into our community to do exactly what the research is suggesting, which is student to student and student to teacher relationships matter. So with that, I'm super excited to be able to share with you 4 panelists today. Donna Raphael is joining us from the communities as a community school and family engagement director at David Patterson Community School. We also have with us today Gabriella DeLeoon, who is a Hofstra University volunteer corps member who works in Hempstead Union Free School District. And we have Dr. Lauren Burignat-Kozol, who is the Associate Dean of the Honors College at Hofstra University. And we have with us Tiara Adams, the Community School Director at Hempstead Union Free School District, who are all joining us today. And we're very excited to have them. And I'm only going to keep the slides up for a little bit longer, and then we'll give them a little bit more spotlight here and to share more. But I wanted to kick it off by first just really asking our panelists, first of all, to come off mute. But it'd be great to hear a little bit more, really about what each of you, introduce yourselves and briefly share about the work that you support in K-12 with its K-12 students. And Tiara, I'll bring up those slides for you if you want to
Sure,
kick us off.
sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll wait for this. I'll begin as you're pulling up the slides. There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Tiara Adams. I'm the community school director. I'm located at ABGS Middle School, but I come by way of the Hempstead School Union Free School District in New York, Long Island. In my role, I support attendance, family engagement, and just developing a whole child using the community schools framework. So our work is very important as we ensure that students have academic, social emotional, and just basic needs to support so they are ready to show up and learn. I am a firm believer that you have to meet the basic needs for anyone in order for them to thrive. I'm honored to join today's Attendance Solutions Network learning community and just share how we leverage the community schools framework to strengthen attendance, belonging, and student engagement. And here, Donna and I, my colleague, she'll speak shortly, but we just put together quick data about our school district. We are pre-K through 12 across schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. Teachers, please make.
We have 5, as you see, we're in the ground. We'll have an announcement for dismissal. We have a total of 4,699 students across the district. We have 5 elementary schools. We have 1 middle school, 1 high school, and we newly have 1 alternative school. If you know, you know. Yes, so I'm going to now pass it to Donna, and then we'll jump back and forth and share.
Good afternoon. As you just heard, I'm still in the school at this particular moment. My name is Donna Raphael, and I am the Community School and Family Engagement Coordinator. And as my colleague Tiara mentioned, I am also located in the Hempstead Union Free School District, and my particular school is the David Patterson Elementary School. In my work, I am also here to support and not only our students, our teachers, but also our parent and community. And our integrated services is really to ensure that these things work seamlessly. We have been really focused on attendance this year, and we want to really talk a lot about how we are working collaboratively to make some improvements in that area. But am I waiting to do the entire report? I'm just going to do the introduction, but just wanted to say I am also honored to be here this afternoon, and we'll let our colleagues from Hofstra speak, and then we'll come back and do our report.
Wonderful. Dean Lauren, tell us a little bit more about the work you support.
Hi, everyone. So I'm also at Hofstra right now, as Gabby probably is too. And aside from being a dean, or as a big part of my deanship, I run a program called the Hofstra Service Corps. And originally, I'm a dean of Honors College. Originally, this started in Honors College as a small group. And we went to a soup kitchen, and we worked at the soup kitchen once a week. But in the meantime, I was working on a partnership with Hempstead High, and that partnership grew, and it became a tutoring event with the students in the Honors College. Since then, we joined forces with our service corps, and we added to that 2 local libraries that we are homework helpers at, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have students who tutor first through fifth graders, and on Wednesdays, sixth through 12th graders in at the libraries. And then we tutor at the high school, and the high school encouraged us to work with some of the students at the middle school who were trying to get into high school. And that's where we started with ABGS. And since then, the ABGS program, the Alberta Gray Middle School program, has been really central to what we've done. And we've done science initiatives and and this initiative on absenteeism, and also all sorts of tutoring. So right now, the Hofstra, so we moved from the Honors College Service Corps to the whole of Hofstra University, and we have about 75 students going into schools and libraries every single day of the week. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And Gabby, tell us a little bit about you, what you're majoring in, and sort of your role. And then we'll kick it back to Donna and Tiara to talk a little bit more about this slide and open it up a little bit more.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Gabby, and I'm a Hofstra student studying health science on the pre-med track. I'm also a member of the Hofstra Service Corps. So last semester, I had the opportunity to tutor K through 12 students at the Hempstead and Uniondale libraries. And now this semester, I'm supporting Miss Tiara Adams at ABGS Middle School with the absentee issues. So my focus is really on helping students and making them feel supported academically and personally, so that school feels like a place that they want to come back to every day.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to add on to that. I'm just super thrilled. One of the most impactful partnerships that we have here at ABGS is the Hofstra University program. So I just want to go a little deeper on that because for 3 years, the Service Corps tutors and mentors have supported our students one-on-one, small group. They push in. Sometimes Gabby's pulling students out of their lunch. Like, you can eat and talk. You need to eat and fix your attendance. You're here. We need to grab you. And so they discuss attendance goal and celebrate improvements. And one of the ways that we do is we're nurturing students. It's not so much of, we're not, it's not punitive, right? We're just like, no, we're giving them candy as we're expressing the importance of just physically being here and engaging the students. And what makes this partnership so unique is that it benefits both sides, right? So Hofstra students gain the authentic field experience, and our middle school students gain relatable mentors who boost their motivation and confidence. So students consistently tell us that they look forward to meeting the Hofstra mentors, and that alone just moves attendance.
Yeah.
So we are definitely a work in progress, but Hofstra is definitely one of the main partners. So when I speak community schools, I speak about the mentors who are driving our students to be here. Sometimes they don't want to hear from the teachers. They don't want to hear from the principals, administrative, and maybe not myself. So when I realize I'm in these meetings, right? So I'm in the office. The students are the Hofstra students are going to grab students, and I hear the students are engaging more because it's almost like their peers. It's not coming from me where they're like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble. Miss Adams wants to talk to me. And I realize that I'll have Gabriella pull out their folder and talk to them. And it's just kind of like they're a little more at ease. And she's speaking about authentic experience that we were all a student before.
Yep. Well, let me direct us back to the slide, and then we'll talk a little bit more. But for you, Tiara, and perhaps you want to kick us off here, Donna. We know that school site coordinators play an integral role to provide wraparound supports. Tell us more about aligning resources, particularly across your schools, as well as the high school, and as part of the district's attendance improvement efforts. Like, how does that all sort of align as you have evolved in your both in your roles, but also as as thinking about absenteeism as a major theme, and making yourselves sort of a known partner in that work as community school site coordinators?
I think what's important is I'll start because I'm at the elementary level, and when we talk about transferring our services from our school into the middle school, that relationship is extremely important. So the way that we do that is definitely by aligning some of the data that is shared across the community schools program from myself and to with Tiara Adams, because one of the ways that we know is that our district is priority, especially this school year, has been really focused on attendance trends across all buildings, patterns such as chronic absenteeism. We look at how transportation is an issue because the Hempstead community is a walking community. We also look at reoccurring medical absences, what's needed to track these issues system-wide. We also look at how our families, many of them are unhoused and may be also, suffering from food insecurities. And so looking at how we can, as a whole community, which means the entire family, our school community as well, how are we looking at what services can we provide for them? Tiara and I definitely, once we started, we developed a comprehensive list of community partners, and we'll both speak back and forth towards that. But what that meant was, what were we seeing in our individual schools? And if I have the youngest child here and she has the older child in the middle school, how are we working together to ensure that the entire family is receiving the services that they need?
Yes.
I'll kick it back to you.
Yes, sure. Yes. So with the line of resources across schools, Donna and I, we're like married, literally. Our community schools approach creates alignment across the elementary and middle school level, which is essential. We coordinate with resources and supports pre-K through grade 8 so that the experience is just seamless across buildings, aligning tutoring and mentoring and SEL services, family outreach, and connecting families to food, clothing, and wellness resources. We share attendance data. We identified a common tier 2 and tier 3 students and collaborate on strategies to work across grades. So we just maintain the line of communication so that our strategies and partnerships continue as students transition upward. So our goal is just to reduce fragmentation so that families don't feel like each year they're just starting over. So when schools coordinate together, we're not operating in silos, we're creating continuity. So a lot of these partners, and which is great because when we have our parent teacher conference, they're never on the same day. So Donna may be Monday where we have just a slew, a plethora of resource tables for family, and then they're coming to me on Tuesdays giving out the same information for our families as well, so that there is no gaps. So I'll talk a little bit about the pillars. As you see on the screen right now is the 4 pillars of community schools, which is the active family and community engagement. So we have different services such as mental health services for our students. As Bob mentioned, in that survey, one of the main issues are mental health issues, and that's just not our students. The students are feeling the mental health issues that their parents are having. So that's impacting their attendance in school. We have restorative circles with our students across all buildings. We're really big on restorative justice in circles and practices. We each have attendance team collaborations. In fact, this morning I had an attendance meeting, and we shared the growth that we're seeing. I want to spotlight in September, our ADA, which is average daily attendance, was 89%, which is not good, right? We want to be in the 90s. October, we pushed it up where we were at 91%. And today we reported for November where we were at 94% of ADA. So we're constantly, just each month we're increasing. And I shared, I was a part of the Partnership for Student Success Fall Summit in DC, which, by the way, where I didn't meet Jen. And one of the things that I did share, we shared across the room, is that a lot of these attendance issues as well, we have to know that it's human error, clerical error, reconciliation of sometimes the students are present and the teachers are not marking them absent. So we can't take away from the fact that students are showing up to school, and they very much maybe just marked not present. So I'll ping pong it back
Yes.
to
Yeah.
Donna for a second to just talk about some of the community partners that we have here in Long Island in New York.
Thank you.
Just before we move from there, Tiara will tell you that I was, when I started, I was really obsessed with the attendance, in terms of teachers taking attendance and just being aware that oftentimes when students are late, that they need to backtrack and just make sure that they were then taking attendance. And as she mentioned, we're both intricately involved in our attendance teams. We didn't start out that way, which was one of the benefits of, really staying steadfast and really focused on attendance, along with what was happening in the district, that they saw us as one of the one of the community schools as a very, very important part of how we move that needle. Our community partners are really, really important to us, because when we think about what we were noticing in terms of root causes and what was happening in those individual families, we were able to kind of identify in our community that there were organizations that would be able to kind of expand some of the learning time opportunities, and also just to help with some of the supports that our families need. So, for example, I'll just kind of throw out a few. So Cornell Cooperative Extension, when we start to think about nutrition and food and what was happening in our families, while yes, we are talking about families that have food insecurities, but when you do have families, how are you making budgets, and how are you taking a look at how you're feeding your family, making those dollars stretch? Cornell Cooperative Extension has been able to provide for us some of those workshops that really give that information to our families, and not only just in school, but also to help in the evening when we have our family engagement meetings, our PTO meetings, and our PTSA meetings. We were looking at, community counseling center. Yes, community counseling center. When Tiara mentioned the mental health services, how important is that for us to not only be able to speak to a family when we've been able to identify that there's mental health needs in the family, but not to just send them coldly to an appointment, but to pick up the phone and make that a warm handoff to say, to the parent, listen, you're going to go, we made this appointment with you, but you're going to speak directly with this person. And that person has been able to warmly greet that family, so that it's an extension of what we're teaching them, what we're helping them with here, that they feel that same at those organizations. Cohen's Children Medical Center, that's an organization that we both work with, because they are Northwell, which is a part of one of the hospital systems here on Long Island. They're one of the largest, and they provide not only workshops for children, but also for families. And they also do professional development for our staff. And so there are many, many other organizations, and, instead of just continuing to rattle them all off, I just want to kind of give the overarching thing that when we notice that there is something that our families need, we go and make sure that we identify what organizations are in our local community that we can help to address those needs.
Yeah. And I'm sure this list could be many pages long as a result of that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk a little bit more about the integrated efforts that you have as you think about what your families need and what you can sort of help as the district is mapping out and prioritizing its tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports. But let's move over to Dean Lauren. Thank you for joining us today. The Hofstra Service Corps is an incredible opportunity for Hofstra students to engage in meaningful service learning. But tell us about the partnership with Hempstead Public Schools, what you believe are the unique opportunities that higher education institutions can offer as districts struggle to reduce chronic absenteeism. Not everyone has a Hofstra in their backyard, but they may have a community college, they may have a technical school. So talk to us about what you believe are those unique opportunities.
Okay, sure. Well, some of them actually have already been said. And I think the main resource that we have is bright, young, successful people who are enthusiastic, who model throwing your heart into something, who offer and often, some of whom have come from schools that are like the Hempstead schools, and even one or two that went to the Hempstead schools. And we did have one in my program who went to Hempstead High, and then she tutored at Hempstead High. And having that as a role model says, you can think about the future and you can do it too. And one of the initiatives that we've done, particularly with the high school, is to have some of the kids come over to Hofstra, have a pizza party outside, be there during Earth Day or a day that's fun at Hofstra, usually in the spring. But to see that college is something that's right down the road is very important, and that it's a real place. So our students, when they go into the schools to tutor or to look out for and help the students to remember to come to school or whatever it is, they are as much mentors as they are tutors.
Yeah.
And much of what they're modeling with is just in their being. That they're young and they're cool and they've just been through what these other people are going through fairly recently. And one of the things that I encourage the students beforehand to do is not to make assumptions about who they're going to see and what they'll see something and they'll imagine certain things or certain politics or whatever it is. And those assumptions are things that you want to stay away from. And when I first got started with this, I also made some assumptions. And then I went into Hempstead High at AVGS and I saw these wonderful, miraculous people who have some challenges that our students don't have. But the thing that struck the students and the thing that struck me was not the differences. It was the similarities. And the fact that these students, many at the high schools are in AP classes and they're trying hard and working on their college essays or starring in Beauty and the Beast or whatever it is. And they can make all these connections that set up, as was already said, a relationship not of an authority figure, but as a kind of trainer or somebody who's just a few steps ahead of you, somebody who's not exactly a friend, but somebody who you can talk to, who's not going to give you a grade, who's there only to make your situation better. So a kind of coach. And they do ask the students things about college, like what's college life like and everything, and it gets them enthusiastic. And one of the things that I've said to my students is, you can do so much more for these students than I can. Because I'm not you and I'm not young and I'm not there and I'm not cool to them. And that coolness factor makes a huge, huge difference. So that would be one of the big things in terms of, and I think that the students are excited to see our students. And that's another, as Gabby suggested, another incentive to come to school. I just had one of the students, along with the teacher who oversees the high school program, she called me this morning and she was just saying how much she loved the tutors and how she was so excited about having worked yesterday with one of them and how this other student, Ben, is really fun. And this idea that is a reminder that learning is cool, that school is fun, and that there's somebody who can help them break things down who might have struggled like them not so long ago. It's all part of the helping process. One of the things that we encourage our students to understand is the kind of sociology of the area. And so, with a tutoring program in college, the college students are learning things too. And one of the things that, it's so great for the college students. They think about themselves differently. They often change careers because we had one who worked at ABGS who just over the last month actually won a Rhodes Scholarship. And she did it in part by writing about her experience at ABGS, and she ran the science labs there. And those were so meaningful to her. And the passion that she brought to that, again, it paid off in her life. She didn't do it for that reason, but it all of the things that I see the students getting a sense of citizenship. One of the things I tell them is, you know, we Hofstra, which looks very beautiful, you know, and it has one of, you know, the 16th most beautiful arboretum in the country. It won an award for. And I say to them, you know, we're not a flying saucer that landed in Hempstead. We are part of this community, and we may look a little different, but we want to bring that sense that we are citizens, that we owe something to the community, and the community in turn gives that back. And in order to understand Long Island, which has a very specific history, I think it's wonderful to understand what's happening in the psychology of the families, but also the structural psychology of the area, or the sociology, let's say, of the area. And, you know, Hempstead shares a street with Garden City, and even the name tells you the difference, because you just drive by and you see concrete, and then suddenly you see trees. And when we started at Hempstead High, and I'm happy to report that these numbers have gone up, but Garden City had a 99% graduation rate from their public high school, and Hempstead High had a 38% graduation rate, and they share a street. And that means that something structural is happening in this area. And if you go back to the 1970s, you know, there was a white flight from the city. People came to areas like Garden City to get away from integration, and they wanted to be near places like Hempstead so that they could have domestic help in their homes. And when the students understand that, they begin to think, well, maybe I can help get those graduation rates up. And maybe on the one hand, I'm actually connecting with a human being, and I love that process. And on the other hand, I'm actually structurally changing an area that terrible wrongs have been done to. So that sense of both service, but also that kind of civic engagement, you know, is, I think, at least from the college point of view, is very, very important for them to get in, to have that kind of enthusiasm. One of the things that I've had to deal with is worrying about the absenteeism, not just of the students over on the middle school level and the high school level, but my own students, because they're gung-ho and totally enthusiastic, and then midterms hit.
Mm,
And how do you get them to remember that there's a human being at the other side
yeah,
waiting for them, and that human being, they can do wonderful good if they keep showing up, and they can do a little bit of harm if they don't. You know, that being able to keep showing up is so important, you know, and that they really have to think about this as a job. And it teaches wonderful things like responsibility, and they do connect to these students and think about themselves differently in the process of that. And so the absenteeism, which started out rough at the beginning of this semester, for example, it changed during the course of the semester, and my students keep showing up. And if my students keep showing up, then it's a model again for the
yeah,
students on the other side, which is
yeah.
really, really important. So it's,
Thank
again,
you,
it's a
DeLeoon.
flow. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I do appreciate so much of what you shared in terms of thinking about, and I'm sure that folks could reach out and with your permission, we can, share more about the nuts and bolts, about the operational pieces of how this looks as well. Maybe there's time in Q&A to do that as well. But I'd love to hear from Gabby, who is in fact one of your students doing this work. And I'd love to hear about this opportunity, how it's impacted you, but also like, what does it look like day in and day out? Like, why do you keep showing up?
Yeah, so my role has definitely changed throughout being part of the service corps. I started off tutoring and now I'm mostly just helping Miss Adams, but the roles while helping Miss Adams have changed as well. So I can one day be working on organizing the food from the food drive they're doing, or hanging up the coats, washing the laundry of the coats that need to be washed before going out into the clothing drives. Um, or like delivering student of the month certificates. That's one of my favorite parts because I knock on the door and then I'm like, oh, it's student of the month. So I give the certificates out to the students and they all clap for their classmate, and it's just a really nice thing to see. I know Miss Adams, she worked so hard on making those students feel special. She had a dinner for their families, I know. So I think that definitely encourages the students to excel in school and show up every day. But yeah, so my goal has just been to really brighten their day when I'm there, and just be a supportive role for them. But yeah, so.
Wonderful. Well, I know that we have a lot more that we could talk about. I'd love to, very quickly, as we look at the time, just a couple of minutes, Donna and Tiara, if there's some lessons learned before we do our quick lightning round for everyone. But I'd
Okay.
like to hear a little bit more about what are some lessons that you've learned in your role, particularly as you think about how you spend your time, compared to when you first started in the role, just giving people some bite-sized information that might be helpful. Again, maybe I don't have a school site coordinator. Maybe I've been advocating for one. Maybe there's a role that a partner could play that is similar to that. So as you think about those lessons learned, what's been things that you want to make sure you tell folks
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. Um, I'll kick it off, Donna. And when we first started our roles, we spent so much time reacting, addressing attendance issues as they arose and like putting out fires and trying to solve fires student by student. So I can say over time we learn that sustainable attendance improvement just comes from systems and not just solutions. When we first started this whole community schools framework, it was new to the district, right? So there weren't many attendance teams. There was no structured team. So Donna and I just leaned on each other and created our own little team. And one thing that I did share, we shared this with Jen. One time we got called into a meeting, because we just created our own attendance. We were going in the field, we were calling people, we were, and we were doing a great job at it, but it wasn't something that was already in place. So we kind of if you will, we got in trouble for doing the right thing, but now they see it as let them work, right? Now we just spend so much time creating structures that prevent issues before they start, just constant communication and proactive family engagement and shared routines. One of the things that I built was a huge food pantry, right? So I have a food pantry that we distribute food to the community, and not just food. I mean, coats and socks and clothes. We have a washer, we have a dryer. And it was a little broken at first. Maybe we saw 20 family members came each week. And now we're seeing almost 150 family members each Wednesday to come to this staple food community. And it's a hub. So just creating systems to address not just tier 1, but tier 2 and tier 3. You can't come to school if you're hungry and you can't eat, and your mom didn't get paid, and you have to, drop off your sibling, but your sibling is hungry. So all of this is connecting back to attendance. So just creating systems weekly and building communication channels and meeting with attendance teams that the district did not have before Donna and I were here. So I'll patch it back to you, Donna.
Thank you. I'll just expand a little bit about that. I think, in addition to what Tiara shared, we learned Standing meetings with building leadership was extremely important because it was kind of haphazard, especially when I started here at elementary. Like she said, they were totally unaware of what my role was. So I found that I was kind of running after administration to try to get a meeting. But now there is a standing weekly meeting that we all attend and we really address certain issues. We also understand that data drives the priorities, right? We cannot continue to just look at things and what we feel. It isn't about that at all. We also learned that long-term planning is not optional. We have to begin to plan from the very beginning. Sometimes in August, we start our planning for the entire year. And I think one of the most important things, because I know that we've said a lot, but one thing I'd like to leave you with is that the work is most effective when rooted in equity and not charity. We have to make sure that we are doing what is best for the entire community. Jen, you're muted. Jen, you're
Thank
muted.
you. Well said. Well said, Donna. I want to give everyone one more chance, just as we call them here at PSS, our lightning round, which is really each of you. And I'm going to kick it off first with Dean Lauren and Gabby. Let's have Gabby start since she ended and we'll go back around. How about that? This is just your chance to share one piece of advice in a sentence or less for attendees and those who are going to listen to this, who are looking to align resources to support students and their families and to address, you know, root causes as well as create systems and structures to address long-term implications of chronic absenteeism. So as we think about that, Gabby, what is one advice from your seat, given your experience, given the role that you've played, that you have?
I think within this role of being a volunteer, I've realized that there's so many different parts that go into the absenteeism, whether that be food insecurity or not having housing. I think that telling the stories of the people that you've impacted personally, to encourage others to get involved is really important. Like, I've told my own friends about my volunteering at the middle school, and they're like, oh, I want to join next year. So I just think that telling the stories of how you've impacted people is so important and special.
Thank you, Gabby. Dean Lauren.
So I would say my piece of advice is if you start up a program and it's not working, or even if a program has worked in the past and suddenly it has a downturn, to push through the downturns. And I will say this, when I started at ABGS, we had a lot of problems. This was before Tiara was at ABGS, and we had lots of problems getting in. It took us, first of all, 5 years to actually even get in the
Helpful to know.
door at Hempstead High. But at ABGS, we had a program that had a hard time getting off the ground. And I went to my boss and I said, I'm having a hard time. And he said, end the program. And I said, I'm not doing that. And I am so, so happy. And I feel that what ABGS has done is now our strongest program that we work with. And it's been just a great joy to see my students change and to see the possibilities for stronger attendance and better graduation rates at the high school and all sorts of things. And many, many other schools that are constantly calling me and saying, we want to be a part of this program. So the idea that there are hard moments, that there are moments when we were banging our heads against the wall, when I had too many absentees on my side, and there are new systems you can put in place. There are ways to figure those out, and it's par for the course that happens. So just keep pushing through, and eventually you have a program that's really wonderful. And that's in the course of 1 week once, it went from total disaster to my proudest moment of being with the Service Corps. So sometimes even things turn around very quickly.
Stick with itness. Keep trying, keep iterating, keep communicating. And how about you, Donna, before we turn it over to Tiara to close us out? One
Absolutely.
piece of advice.
You got it. So I would say to create a seamless support network so students and families have what they need to show up, stay engaged, and successfully transition through each level of schooling.
That was great, Donna.
Thanks, Tiara.
Yes. So in Hempstead, our superintendent's theme, every year there's a different theme for the school district. And our theme is innovation, accountability, and purpose, right? And our community schools approach is rooted in the belief that academic success is tied to meeting the whole child need. And attendance isn't just about students getting into the building, it's about creating an innovative place that they want to show up to every day. So with this model and partnerships like Hofstra, we're able to address barriers, build trust, and create opportunities to keep the students engaged and connected. So thank you for just allowing us to share our work. And I'm just excited to continue learning and growing with you all.
Thank you.